Joining me now is Transportation Minister Marc Garneau, chair of the Cabinet Committee on Canada-U.S. Relations. Minister, today is the deadline for NAFTA, and you still have no deal. Why not?
We're not working towards a deadline. We're working towards a deal that is good for Canada. We've said that from the beginning. We've been very constructive in these negotiations, and we're going to continue to do so. And we believe that there is the potential to have a win-win-win for all three countries of the NAFTA.
Now, I know today you said earlier, you said that you're not concerned about the deadline there, and on Friday you said that there is no real deadline. But that's never been a line by the Liberal government before. At some point, don't you run into a deadline?
We have always said right from the beginning that we wanted to have a deal, but not any deal. It has to be a deal that is good for Canada. And we are negotiating that deal. That is the #1 priority, that we end up with a deal that is good for Canada and hopefully for the other two countries.
Now, I know that the government likes to say we're only going to accept a good deal. We'd rather have no deal than a good deal. But how would be a situation where there are millions in tariffs, where you're looking at potentially losing thousands of jobs and market access to the U.S.? How is that preferable to a deal where it's not an ideal situation for you?
Look, we know each other's positions. We know the things that matter to Canada. We will make that very clear to the United States. They know our position, and we will stick to those positions because they are important for our country. This is in the nature of negotiations. The easy parts get done at first, and in the end, you have to work out the more difficult parts. We know exactly what is important for Canada, and we're going to continue to negotiate so that we hold on to a good deal for Canada.
But are you willing to keep dairy protection and the dispute settlement mechanism, to keep pushing for that at the risk of tariffs, which economists say would put the Canadian economy into a significant recession all across this country?
We're conscious of all the factors that play into this, but at the end of the day, Canadians want us to come up with a deal that is good for Canada. And there are a lot of things that have to be negotiated and have to be discussed and agreements arrived at. And we're very conscious of all that. And we have, from the beginning, made constructive proposals to find a deal that works out for all three countries. And we will continue to do so because for us, it has to be a good deal for Canadians.
But Minister, with all due respect, you're not answering the question of whether you're willing to take the risk of tariffs here, because no deal risks tariffs, and that risks a national recession.
And what I'm telling you is that what we end up with has to be a good deal that covers everything. And that's the position that we've taken from the beginning. And that's what we're going to do right up until we.
So does that mean that you're willing to take the risk of auto tariffs?
That covers everything. You have to look at the whole picture, and that is what we've done from the beginning, and that's what we're going to continue to do because there are a lot of interests at play here, and we are looking at all of those so that we end up with something that is good for Canada.
But are you willing to risk auto tariffs, which I think all economists will tell you would not be good for Canada?
I'm not going to negotiate in front of the camera here. We have an excellent team of negotiators. They are negotiating this deal in the interests of Canada, and Canadians support our approach to negotiations with the United States.
But will Canadians still support you if you don't get a deal and Mexico and the U.S. move ahead with their own, which is what both Mexico and the United States have said they'll do?
Canadians have told us that they want us to negotiate a good deal for Canada, and that's precisely what we've been doing from the beginning.
Well, Minister, I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you about the Governor-General. You are a former astronaut. I'm sure that you know Governor-General Payette. There's been a lot of criticism of her in the media over the past week, in particular, about the number of duties that she's engaged in, about the number of public appearances she's putting in and events that she's hosting. Is your government satisfied with her performance as Governor-General?
I'm not going to comment on that question, Mercedes. I will tell you that the Governor-General is a personal friend of mine. I have known her for a very long time, She is the head of state of our country, and I'm not going to give you my personal opinions on that subject.
But as a minister, are you concerned about whether, as you say, the head of state, one of the most important jobs in the country, is being fulfilled when reportedly the Governor General didn't want to make time in her schedule to sign off on the marijuana legislation on the day that it was passed?
I'm not going to comment on these things. I'm going to tell you that our Governor General is a role model for Canadians, particularly for young people who are interested in science, for women in general, and she is a personal friend of mine. So I'm not going to comment here on camera on anything else but that.
Okay, before we go, let's go back to NAFTA for just a moment then, Minister. Going forward, what is the primary message you're going to try to deliver to both the President and Congress about whether you have flexibility on this file?
We will continue to repeat to the NAFTA negotiators on the U.S. side that we want a good deal. These are the things that are important for us. The Americans also have things that are important for them. Let's try to find a deal here that will satisfy both of us. That's essentially the essence of negotiations. It's always been that way. And for us, it's essential that we continue to defend Canadian interests.
Okay, we'll see how all of this rolls out, putting a lot of faith in Congress there and in the negotiators. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Mercedes.